Okay, now this is the part that kept me from getting anything done with Gentoo, because I was always afraid of this particular section, and that's compiling the kernel. I don't use GenKernel because it makes an initerative file, and I'm more interested in how the system works and how things go together. And I did not know how to compile a kernel because I honestly thought you had to go through every single setting, and that's not the case. You don't have to do that. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and get another terminal going and secure shell back in, because I'm going to need a second terminal for this. Alright. Now, the key to doing this, and this is something I learned just from reading, and I read everything I could find about kernel compiling, and there was one article, which I can't remember what it was called, but basically there was a part of it which said, once you learn to compile the Linux kernel, you'll wonder what you were so worried about, and you'll feel kind of silly because you were afraid to do it. And that's basically true. Once I learned how to compile a kernel, I kind of wondered what I was, you can mess up a system pretty badly, but it's not as scary as it looks. It is time consuming to do it the first time, but usually after that it's pretty simple. Now, lspci is a command. Oh, I keep forgetting. I gotta be root. Oh, man. Oh, bullshit. Yes. This is the boot system rescue CD I'm using uses the ZSH shell, which is kind of helps you a little bit more than Bash would, but that's okay. LSPCI will list all the hardware that's on the computer. Now that in and of itself tells us quite a bit, but it doesn't tell us what we need to know when it comes to compiling the kernel, because we need to know specific information. So if we do it again, but we add the -K extension, which stands for kernel driver, then we have a lot more to work with. So what you really want to pay attention to are the kernel drivers. Kernel driver in use, and that's really not what you want to focus on. PCI ePort. Now, since I've done this yesterday, I'm a little bit up on the information. PCI ePort refers to PCI Express service. So I already know right now where I can find that one, and I also already know that it's going to be checked. So then we're going to go back over here, and we have to install the Gentoo sources. Now, I could go through and do all this, but like I said, I know everything already. And the reason that Gentoo does this is because occasionally you'll have something that has the same name. Like if you install Midnight Commander, there is another, and you just type in emerge, say emerge PV MC, then you'll get, it'll ask you which one you want to install, and then you'll have to put in the full thing. Maybe I can do a video on that later on, because I do use Midnight Commander quite a bit. So what I'm just going to do is, since I already know, and I think that I'm going to have to pause it because it's going to take a few minutes to do. And I'm not even going to ask it because there's nothing I really need to change or anything like that as far as the use flags, but I will do it one time. And you don't have to go with the Gentoo sources. You can install a kernel from kernel.org or some other location, or if you're really good at doing kernels, you can even put a kernel in you've made yourself. I don't know how to do that yet. You know, I've only been using Gentoo 10 years, and it's a learning process. Okay. Anything in red is already included. You'll notice over here you've got a capital N that stands for new. And you can, anything in blue is not included yet. And you'll notice it's got the minus sign beside it showing that it is not set. And anything in red is set for that particular piece of software. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video because I know it's going to take at least 10 or 15 minutes to do, and no reason to just sit here and stare off into space. Okay, didn't take too awful long. Now, I already know from yesterday, if you're going to install something, normally what you would do is you would have it pretend to do the install. And what I'm going to do now is I already know what it's going to do. Now, if I'm wanting to add any of these unincluded in the blue use flags, I would, normally what a person would do, or however, you would bring up Nano, you would create a file, and you would put it under package use. Well, I found a way that I can do that without having to use a text editor like Nano or anything like that. In this case, I'm not going to add any of these use flags, but what I've got to do is I got to change the license for this particular piece of software. So what I would do with that is I would use echo and a quote, and then I would copy the whole line that's right here, and I have to get the equal sign because that means it is equal to this particular version of Linux firmware. Copy and paste. And then close it with another quote and a space, and I want to use a single greater than sign because the single greater than sign is telling Gentoo that I want to put what's inside the quotes to a particular location. So now what I've just done is I'm going to echo what's inside the quotes to etc. portage package.license, and the name of the file is Linux firmware. Now if I get an ls on that, let's see, Bash has a history. So, and see right there it is, Linux firmware. So now that's already set. When I run the merge again, I won't get an error. Now I can go ahead and install this. Might have to pause the video again because I think it took a little bit of time yesterday. Okay. Now the firmware is on here. The reason I put the firmware on this particular computer, it's got a graphics card and I want to make use of the graphics capabilities. Now what I got to do is change directory to user/src, which is short for source, /linux. When you install the Gentoo sources, it makes a symbolic link to the actual directory and calls it Linux. And now, I learned a long time ago how to do this, and what I do always in the beginning is use make def config, and that's the first thing I do. Basically, this will set a lot of the settings for me, so I really don't have to do a whole lot. And then I do make menu config. Now I'm going to go ahead and do one right off the bat because it's going to take a few minutes, and I don't want this video to be too long. But basically, Gentoo has a lot of guides on how to do several different things. And since I've done this yesterday, I already know where I need to go to. Now I know for a fact that I have, if I go to this other screen over here and I go down to the bottom of the list, I already know that I've got a Radeon 3100 graphics card. And this right here is the important part to look for, RS780C ATI. So now if I go through these settings, and right there it is, RS780, HD 2400, HD 4200, and I know mine's 3100, so it falls under this category. So it's an R600 family video card. But that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this part down here. Okay, R600, RS780. And I know it's newer than a 4.14. As a matter of fact, I think it's kernel 5. So I need to get these right here. And these are firmware blobs that go into the kernel. And I'm going to copy those, and now I need to, let's see, it's not here. I need to be under device drivers, and now I need to go into generic driver options and look for firmware loader. Okay. Build name firmware blobs into kernel binary, and then I just paste those in. Now if I was using a keyboard, I'd have to type them in, but I'm not going to go through all that, and it'll automatically set up the a few years back there was a problem with this right here, library firmware. It wasn't set, and you had to know how to set it. But, you know, that's how Gentoo works. They make changes, and used to it wasn't even a firmware loader. You had to do it under generic driver options. But progress marches on. Okay, I'm not going to show you how to do everything on here, but I'm going to give you an example of how I do things. Okay, now, I'm under generic driver options. Anytime you see a asterisk, that means it's built in. Now, I already know that's what I need to look at. So I'm going to go back over to the other one. I can get out of here now because I don't need this anymore. And this is what I'm under. So now if I go up here to the very first one, kernel driver in use PCIe port, so I know that's PCI Express, and I know it's already set. AHCI. So now if I go back over here to my menu config, if I press the / question mark key, it'll bring up a search. AHCI. Alright, symbol, and there's the symbol for it. It'll tell you exactly where to find it, and there's a no right there, equals N, so I don't have to set that one. But there is one on here I do have to set. And I just go down the list until I find one. SATA HCI equals yes. AHCI SATA support. Tells me where it's at under serial ATA and parallel ATA drivers. Okay, if I exit out of that, and that's where we're at right now, AHCI SATA support, and it's already checked, so I don't have to mess with it. So I'm going to get out of this because there is one. Let's see. Up. Network device support. Now I have a wired network, so I need to go down to Ethernet driver support. Now I don't need all these, and I don't want them because I've only got one network card. So I'm going to try and get out of these. Because there's no reason to build drivers for stuff you don't have. If you later on get that equipment or add something, then you can work on it. But there's really no reason to build drivers or modules for something you don't have, because it'll never be used. It'll be in the way. It'll probably be loaded as a module and not be doing nothing and just taking up memory and space. So I uncheck all of them. Okay, now I know for a fact that I got a Broadcom and I'm trying to see. And see right here, it's already selected Tygon 3 support. Now, if I go back over here to my thing, my list, and OHCI is USB 1.1, I know it's selected. EHCI is USB 2.0, I know that's selected. I don't have to worry about any of these. And I checked these yesterday, the PII X4 SM bus, and it came up with nothing. And I2C PII X4, all these kernel drivers, it came up with nothing. It worked just fine, so I'm not going to worry about those either. But if I go down here, Ethernet controller, Broadcom Corporation, Nextstream, BCM 5754 gigabit Ethernet. And you see right down here, kernel driver in use is TG3. So if I go back over here, I can see right here Tygon 3. So it's already selected. I don't have to do nothing with it. Now, if you come across something like this and you have to check it, the asterisk symbol means it's built in, and if it's empty or blank, that means it's not checked. Well, this one ain't going to do it. Okay, can't do it with that one. Let's see, might be able to do it with this one. Okay, if you see a capital M, that's a module. Now you can have it built in or you can have it as a module. It really doesn't make much difference. Some things are better as modules, like certain graphics cards you want to have them as a module, but you can build them in and they'll work just fine. The graphics card, if it's a plug-in card, it's better as a module. If it's included on the motherboard, then you can build it in and it'll work okay. So I think that one wasn't checked. Alright, and that's really how you do it. I'm going to go ahead and let's see, what else do I need to do? I got to get out of this real quick and do one thing that is very important. Okay, when it comes to file systems, I see a lot of people making this mistake. Now, I have an extended 3 file system, but apparently the way they got this set up, extended 4 can be used for extended 3, but I'm going to go ahead and check extended 3 anyway. Now, you do not want to make it as a module because your system will not boot if you do that. It has to be built in. I just go down and have everything built in that's under ext3. That way I know I'm safe. And that's really it as far as what you do on compiling the kernel. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video. I'm not completely done yet, but I'm going to make another video when I am finished and go from there.